Hey, I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to Wine, Dine, and 69, a podcast about dating, relationships, sex, and self-love. I am your host, Rachel Dalton. Surprise, surprise, about to go take off again for another travel. It feels like this summer has been just a series of different trips, small trips, all wonderful, and I'm very grateful for every single one of them. This time, I am headed up to the Catskills, where I'm going to meet up with my family. My parents and my brother and his girlfriend are coming from Michigan. I'm swinging up to pick up my other brother, who you will hear from in a little bit, from New York City with his partner. And, of course, my partner's coming with me, too. So it's going to be just 6 days in a cabin in the mountains, just chilling and hanging out with family. I'm really looking forward to it. So that's what I'll be up to when this episode drops. I did want to take a second to acknowledge, obviously you can see from the title of the episode that we are celebrating the 3-year anniversary of the show. Hard to believe that it's been 3 years, August 14th, 2020. But I am filled with so much gratitude for Anna, who helped me start this journey, for everybody that I've talked to, experts, storytellers. Everybody has taught me something through my conversations with them, and I can't wait for everything that's going to come in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, hopefully for a long time to come. I have a lot of really great conversations set up for the second half of 2023. Second half, I guess, actually, we're more than halfway through the year. Ugh, time is going so fast. But anyway, you get it. The backlog of episodes that I have are really excellent, and I'm excited for you to meet everybody that I have lined up, including my brother, who you're going to hear from in the second half of this episode. It's a pretty long conversation, so I'm going to try to keep this short. Before I do go into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about some discoveries. I touch on this a little bit in the conversation that you're going to hear later in the episode, but I figured it was worth mentioning here now too, because it feels really significant to me, and if it unlocked something really big for me, maybe it will unlock something for somebody else. I feel like I came to have a bunch of aha moments in the last week. The day after the last episode aired, I went on a yoga retreat with my friend Anna, and we had a lot of really great conversations on the way there and on the way back. And, the yoga retreat itself was also really wonderful, and being in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York is lovely as well. So it really just, I don't know, a lot of things came to me. I feel like with my therapist for the last 6 months or so, I've been working on a lot of little individual things, but it's kind of felt like there's this big missing piece, that I was missing like the key to it all, that I was figuring out all the little things, but if I could just figure out what this missing piece was, then I could unlock the secret to all of it. And through conversations with Anna and with my partner and with my friends, I think I figured it out, that it has to do a lot with how I intellectualize my emotions and how I intellectualize feelings. And I've never really been super connected to my body, which is funny because I run this, sex relationships podcast, and I'm really well spoken when it comes to my emotions, but I find that I miss the piece. I immediately jump to thinking about it through like a therapy lens. Whereas a lot of people, might have to say, oh, I'm going to have to go think about that. I have no trouble thinking about it. What I really need to do is to feel about it and be in my body about it. And I've always thought that the way that I am and the way that I intellectualize my emotions was good. And I think it is, for the most part. It's kept me from being rather reactive. I'm one of those people who I feel that I'm feeling uncomfortable, and then I immediately jump up to my brain to figure out why I'm feeling uncomfortable. I think about, okay, why am I feeling this way? Where is it coming from? How can I see the other person, if it does have to do with another person? How can I see their perspective in it? Which makes me a wonderfully empathetic person, but as some of my friends would tell you, it also allows people to take advantage of me occasionally. But I immediately go up into my brain instead of just sitting with the feelings. And I think in many ways, my body hasn't felt like mine. From a very young age. I think that a lot of women can probably identify with that. It just kind of, it never really felt like mine. It always kind of felt like I was a visitor in my own body. So what I want to do is work more on being more present. You know, they say trauma is stored in the body, and I guess a coping mechanism that I have had for some of the experiences in my life is just to cut off the connection between my brain and my body entirely. So it's something that I want to work on. I don't want to, let go of a lot of these positive qualities that I have of intellectualizing emotions, but I do want to try to expand the step of feeling the emotions as well, sitting with it, not jumping and reacting right away, or anything like that, but just kind of allowing myself to sit with the emotion and feel it rather than immediately going up into my brain. And through doing that, I just haven't paid much attention to my body for most of my life. But I do. I mean, now that I'm in my 30s, I want to pay more attention to what I'm eating. I want to start just taking care of myself a little bit better instead of just existing in this body. I want to kind of just actually live in it. So that's kind of one of my goals going forward. If you have any thoughts about that, if that's a journey that you've been on or that you are going on too, I'd love to hear from you, hear some tips. I've already started with yoga and some meditations, and I have a stationary bike. So I've started doing that, and just really, instead of letting my brain run crazy like it does, just allowing myself to sit and feel what is going on inside. Kind of a vulnerable thing to share, I suppose, but I guess I don't know how to be any other way, so it is how it is. Well, in addition to that, I get into a ton of stuff talking with my brother, Connor. We talk about introverts. We talk about highly sensitive people. We talk about career. We talk about progress and focusing more on progress versus the actual result, which I suppose kind of has to do with what I just went on a little diatribe about. Connor is truly one of my favorite people in the entire world. I am lucky that my brother is one of my best friends. And it was wonderful to be able to talk to him. You're just kind of going to get to be a little fly on the wall in one of our conversations. I wish I was lying when I said that, like, we talk like this all the time, but we kind of really do just like pontificate and philosophize all the time. So you're kind of just going to see what we do. I hope that you learn a lot from this conversation. Connor is extremely wise beyond his years. And I was saying to some friends over the weekend, I was like, I think I'd probably kill for him. Hopefully nothing will ever come to that, but I would take a bullet for my brother. I would take a bullet for either of my brothers. Really. I'm very, very lucky to have two. When I was going through a really big man disliking phase, due to aforementioned trauma, looking at my brothers and realizing what good men they were, and a couple of other men in my life at the time, really gave me hope that there are really, really wonderful men out there. And I just had the bad luck of experiencing some really, really shitty ones early in life. But anyway, I digress. Please enjoy this conversation. Connor is a writer. He just got a new job, so we are kind of looking backward and reflecting on the journey that he's had. He recently turned 30, and so it was kind of a cool opportunity for us to catch up and look backwards so that we can look forwards. So I hope you enjoy. And after a quick commercial break, please enjoy my conversation with my brother, Connor Dalton.
Calling all citizens of Halcyon City. The newest generation of heroes are now painting the pages of Delinquent Comics, an actual play podcast in the game world of Masks, a new generation. Join our heroes as they struggle to build a team and save the city. Can Titan escape the shadow of his mentor burnout? Is Soul's overwhelming power too dangerous to control? Will Muse discover her past? And how does White Knight stomach all those strange snacks? Listen to Delinquent Comics to find out at allportsopen.com, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found. New issues become available to all citizens every other Monday.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am very excited for this very special episode today because the guest is none other than my brother, Connor Dalton, and, my built-in best buddy since I was 3 and he came into this world. Connor, how are you today?
I'm doing extremely well, Rachel.
Good. It's good. It's funny because I can see you. Listeners can't see you, but I can see you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I need to start off by asking you, you have on your little thing underneath your name, founder of Envision. So first, indulge my curiosity and tell me what that is.
What the hell does that mean? That was just my sense of humor. Because I saw in the software, it said put what your name wants to be represented as, and then e.g., put your company name, e.g., founder of something. And I was like, I want to be the founder of a company. I want to be a CEO. Okay. I want to be like an Elon Musk type on some podcast.
I was like, is there something you haven't told me? I feel like I should know if you founded a company.
I actually got an LLC, and I'm now the founder of Envision.
Great. Okay.
No, it's just a stupid joke.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you for being here, for agreeing to come on for this. It's crazy to think that it's been 3 years. Mom was our guest on our second year, and I'm hoping to track down our other 2 family members for the next couple of years. Yeah. So you're my guinea pig for year 2. But let's kind of start off with you telling people. We're going to get into sibling stuff, and we'll get into kind of our upbringing and the things that we have in common in terms of this career journey that we've had. But how about you just kind of get us started talking a little bit about you and your journey. You can go into a diatribe about philosophy. I know you love to do that. So just take it away and tell us a little bit about what do we need to know about Connor.
Yeah, well, I should start by saying I'm no philosopher in a professional sense. I have no PhD. I've hardly taken really all that many philosophy class. So any philosophy I'm sort of spewing is all personal experience and mismatch of stuff I've heard.
Oh, you've read a lot.
Yeah, I've read a good amount. I'm a learned. I like to read, but yeah. I think I identify most as a writer. I think I've always struggled with the question of who are you? Give me an elevator pitch, because sort of reductive, 30-second snips of who I am or who anybody is always something that I struggle with. I don't know. Maybe I'm just annoying in that way, but I guess I would say I identify as a writer, communicator, a storyteller, a kind person, hopefully on my good days. And I think, growing up in Michigan, I have a love for, nature and being sort of physically present in whether it be sports or hikes, whatnot. So yeah, already kind of rambling, but yeah, I think I would identify most as those things. But I, professionally speaking, I went to school. I was an English major, and I ended up being in the film industry for some time, sort of slaving away for the big production companies and such. And for a sort of creative industry, it was kind of not really all that creative. A lot of the stuff I was doing was just very, very corporate. And so it kind of was disappointing, because I remember in college really wanting, deciding I wanted to have this life as a creative and launching into a career in the film and television industry and having that be kind of anything but. And so then I found a lot of the things that I sought out and outside of work, which was not often because it's very long days, you know, on set and such, were these like creative outlets, like whether it be writing on my own time or working on a friend's passion project or, you know, so on and so forth. So yeah, I just turned 30 recently. So I've had a lot of, I've now had 3 decades. I mean, it's not super old, but it's old enough to know kind of to take stock and know that you're not quite, you know, an 18-year-old anymore. And so there's been a lot of reflecting, I think, over the last couple of months. So yeah, maybe we can explore some of that, but
Definitely.
that's a really long elevator pitch about who I am. I don't know if I even really answered the question, but
I think that it's difficult to answer. I think you're totally right. It's a totally difficult question to answer, but with the way that our minds work as creatives and as really in tune individuals who are incredibly introspective, how can you sum up 3 decades of your life in like a short paragraph? You can't.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's funny because I also am under the umbrella of storyteller. Everything that I do, you know, whether it be this podcast or intimacy directing or acting in theater, or even, you know, my day job in real estate, it's all kind of putting together a story. And I had a similar experience, as you know, where I was working in the publishing industry and was also met with the same thing, that it's not as creative as you might think that it would be. And while it is cool to see your name in a book, or in your case, we've seen your name on the credits of films and such, that's always been very cool. You want to do something that feeds you ultimately. And it's funny that you also have done what I did, which was to make a huge left-hand turn right before you turned 30 into a completely different field. So do you want to just say a little bit about, because I actually haven't talked to you at length about it either, like what you're doing there career-wise and how it's different from kind of the creative, quote-unquote, field that you left behind?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I don't think I can talk too much about it because there's a lot of sensitive information, but it is very similar to like copywriting. It's just more so in IT.
Right.
But yeah, like it's a lot. It's much more, I don't know, like sort of like a modern tech job as opposed to, working with your hands or working in a film and television, production office or working in a publishing house. It's in that whole tech space is sort of stuff we've all heard about, I think, in the last 20 years a lot. But really, I personally hadn't experienced it. And a lot of the jobs that I've worked in my life were either very like physical manual labor, or sort of like, waiting tables or whatnots, stuff that kind of, typically people do to be able to just do that for money and then to be able to do something else something they want to do for themselves and for their ultimate goals. But yeah, this job has been really, really wonderful, I think, in terms of like, I think being able to take another step closer towards financial security and moving forward in that realm. Because, as we all know, like sort of leading more creative life not always does, but can include a lot of tricky like pitfalls with, like financial situations where, it's like, one of the jobs I had when I was younger was as like an overnight toy boxer at Toys R Us. And it's like, you're not really, that's not going to like sustain you or a family for any like, long period of time. But it certainly is like, work and can definitely, help you while you focus on other things. But, finding a job like this has been a lot, really, really helpful, I think, in that realm, but also in just like, I feel very useful. I feel very well fit to the job. And I think it is crazy, like all of the experiences that I've had in my life thus far, I feel like really do have culminated in this job, and so it's really satisfying to see that. And it's something that I think you always get really sick of hearing when you're, I think, younger, or when you're not quite there yet, or but I'm certainly not like, at the top of any mountain, but like it's definitely a big stepping stone in my journey and my story. But it's something that I think people I certainly did get sick of hearing, like, oh, well, it'll come together in ways you didn't, imagine it would.
And I remember telling you that.
Right. You told me that. Dad's told me that. A lot of people have told me that. And I was like, okay, that's really great. I'd like it to come together tomorrow.
Yeah. Like yesterday.
Preferably. Yeah. And yeah, so I think but the thing is, it's funny because that like very sort of trite wisdom, conventional wisdom, is true. It's trite for a reason. And yeah. And so it's fun to kind of see that play out, and it's been very satisfying, I think, to experience. And so I'm, and in short, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really settling in, and excited to see where the journey continues, and also to see how, my other creative projects, what I could choose to continue to do, how those are informed by it. And
exactly. Yeah. Cause it's funny how that all kind of works. I've been doing a lot of reflecting in that way too. I switched careers about a year and a half before you did. And I remember telling you that, just being like, it is just it happens fast. Once it starts happening, it happens really, really fast. But, I've been struggling with this imposter syndrome, entering a very male dominated field, and switching careers and not having any real estate background. And it's been interesting to see how that all kind of falls together. And my partner said to me, like yesterday, my partner who you know, but as we discussed, we're not using names. My partner said to me, like, it feels so sudden, all of this growth, it just feels like overnight my imposter syndrome is gone. And he said, just because the results feel sudden doesn't mean that there wasn't a ton of work behind it. He's like, all of the like struggling that you did and all of the work that you've done for the last year and a half, it might feel like the change of losing your imposter syndrome happened overnight, but there was a lot of work behind it. And I think that's what's so important to point out, is that even though, things did change very quickly for you once this job came into your life, there was a lot of struggle that went behind it, and a lot of work and a lot of mental toughness and resilience that really pushed you through those periods of, really, like, let's be real, like when you are a creative and you're getting older and you don't know if you're gonna be able to do that anymore or what you're gonna have to sustain you, like it can be really dark.
Yeah, especially, and I think I've had a lot of conversations with friends with you about how, like, as a person who's, more creatively inclined, and I'm not the type of person who thinks there are creatives and there are other people. Like, mm-hmm. I don't want to come off that way, because I do think everybody is creative in their own right. Mm-hmm. I think, like, when we say creative, my assumption is we're talking more about people who are kind of pursuing projects that really heavily lean on almost, that really heavily lean on creativity, like jobs that are in, publishing, writing, jobs that are kind of, very romantic in a lot of ways, and romanticized heavily in culture and everything. But yeah, I think what you said about sort of feeling like everything sort of has come into place seemingly overnight, and it not really actually that being the case is something that's really, actually, I wanted to talk about today with you, because it's so funny that you mentioned that, because that's something that has been on my mind too. It's like this idea of like process versus the result, the end results, and being more about the process than results. And I was listening to a podcast on like meditation and mindfulness, and there's a lot of content like that out there now, but so nothing original is going to be said here, but I think it is important. Like, I do think trying to become a person who's more about the process than results is ultimately, I think, the more fulfilling path. It seems like to me, just given what I've read and heard and my opinion, just because, when you're focusing on doing rather than the sort of material result, it does it. I don't know. I do think you get more lost in it. There's this, there's a lot of literature on that sort of flow state, like Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, I think is the name. He's like a guy. He's the guy who wrote Flow, the book Flow.
Right.
Yeah. And it's talking about that. It's like just finding yourself lost in any given task, in the day, and not being, kind of, a victim to your, wherever your mind is taking you.
Definitely.
But I think as it, relates to like career and like all the heavy lifting you did to try and get yourself to the place where you are, I mean, that's just a lot of hard work that can't be, understated. And getting to the point where you feel fine, and it feels like it happens overnight, but really it's the result of like day in, day out grinding in a space, where you don't always feel, like, welcome, or it's I think it is difficult. It's incredibly difficult, but that is how I think what growth is, right? Like it's so, I don't know. It's so incredible to watch and see. But yeah, I think being process driven rather than results driven is definitely something that I'm aspiring to, just from like a practical, philosophical.
Most things are about process, right? And again, it sounds contrite, but it's about the journey, not the destination, or whatever people say, Yeah. So I definitely can see that, and how, but it is frustrating because, like you said, it's like, well, I want this to happen like now though, or like, well, last week, like why can't the pieces just fall together? But once they start to fall together, it just kind of all clicks. I told my therapist this last week, we've been working on these different topics for the last 6 months, really. And I told her, I was like, it's like we've been putting this puzzle together, but it's only been like the edge pieces. And there's been this giant hole in the middle that's been missing.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
It's this like missing piece that I just like can't fill in. And, I went to Ithaca last weekend on this like yoga retreat, and last weekend, a bunch of these pieces just fell into place. And when I had my session with her this past week, we just were like, this is the middle of the puzzle. Like, it's like all of these little things, but if I hadn't been putting together all those little pieces, those different corners and edges of the puzzle, then it wouldn't have made sense to me when that one big piece of information fell into my lap, right?
Yeah. And it never falls into your lap or comes at you when you are, sort of asking it to. It always does it on its own time, which is why we can't really, it's like, it's kind of ceding control to, the process, I guess, or, like it's, people have many ways in which they want to put it. Like they're ceding control to God, they're ceding control to the universe. Yeah. They're ceding control to the process. But I think it is all sort of similar, and that you are kind of just saying like, I have a limited amount of control about what I can do. And I'm going to focus on doing whatever I'm doing and being, as lost in it as I can. But that's so interesting. Like it makes me think, you're talking about your trip to Ithaca. It makes me think about, like how like good it is to get out of your normal sort of routine once in a while, and get out somewhere completely different, and preferably in a beautiful place like Ithaca. Yes. Very preferably amongst the waterfalls and the green rolling hills. But yeah, I think like, because obviously like I think humans are like creatures of habit. We need our routines. We need that sense of security that, things are going to be more or less similar day in, day out. But at the same time, things aren't exactly the same day in and day out. We're thrown curveballs, sometimes really devastating curveballs, sometimes mediumly devastating curveballs. And then sometimes we are, thrown completely out of our element. And then sometimes we need to throw ourselves out of our element and escape to, the wild, or escape to a different city, or go somewhere else, go back home for a little bit, or wherever that might be, or just, going to a different park than you normally do. Novelty and the benefits of novelty, I think definitely can, open up your mind to a whole bunch of insights that you may never have come to had you been going along your normal day-to-day life. I mean, I think I was listening, take a shot for every time I say I was listening to a podcast, but I was listening to a podcast.
That's my life, and you're on a podcast, so it's super meta.
Yeah. That's how we get our information out. Where they were saying that couples who experience novelty together, and that could be trips, that can be going, that can be making a new meal together that you haven't done before, that can be going to a new museum that you haven't gone before. It doesn't have to be some massive thing, some massive romantic thing. I mean, it should be romantic ideally, but doing something new together, who experience novelty together more often, are more likely to stay together than couples who sort of do the exact same thing over and over again. And on one hand, that sounds of course, but on the other hand, it's that does make sense. Obviously to grow, you need to be challenged. You need to put yourself in different environments. Obviously, you don't want to do it too fast. I think that's how you can really shock your nervous system in a not good way. But I think, doing it just the right amount of pushing yourself over your comfort level definitely is super beneficial to anyone. And again, whether that's traveling to, Thailand alone, or whether that for you is going to, a movie alone, or going to, a dance with friends and you don't like dance. I don't know, that sort of novelty and pushing yourself and is something that I'm also trying to aspire to. And I think, a lot of that is kind of fits within the process versus results thing. Cause I mean, through that exploration, you are sort of, you are involved in a process and sort of discovering more about yourself. You're gathering more data about yourself. So yeah, definitely interesting. I think how traveling, whether it's to a different state or country, or whether it's to a new sort of park nearby your home.
Doing work at a different coffee shop than usual. Yeah. Keeping up routine, definitely. And, I think that two people who I know that you and I got into Elaine de Botton at around the same time, the School of Life. And another person who I really, really admire and talk about on the podcast a lot, in addition to Elaine de Botton, is Esther Perel. And she talks about that the unknown is kind of like the thing that will keep couples together. And the more that you do unknown things where you haven't maybe approached, I don't know, maybe you've never gone to a yoga class with your partner before. You're going to learn new things about your partner through that experience together. Yeah. And that in and of itself, and realizing, oh, this was something unknown about my partner, even though we've been together for 35 years. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad, by the way. Yeah. Even though, they've been together for 35 years. I think they're 37 actually, but I digress. I'm learning this new thing about my partner because I'm seeing them in a new context. Yeah. And I think there really is something to that, but it is difficult for people like us. I'm a Taurus, you are a Cancer, for as much as I know that you're going to roll your eyes at that. It's fine. Your partner is into the astrology too. I talked to your partner about the astrology. So, yeah. But anyway, we there's comfort in routine. And so I think it's easy for people like us to get stuck in the comfort of routine and to have to get out there and challenge ourselves with more of those unknowns, because it always pays off. Always, 100% of the time it pays off. Yeah. But it's taking those steps to get there that I think can be really challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, that's another thing I was going to say is like, as much as as much as I'm like sort of like talking about novelty, like I'm definitely a person who loves comfort. Like, and again, you can attribute that to me being a Cancer, a crab who loves my warm water, and showers. But it's true. Like I do, like that is something that like it's very difficult for me personally to do new things, and because it is sort of out of your comfort zone. You get a little anxious. You're doing something you're not familiar or good at. And you kind of feel a little lost in the process of that. But that's kind of where a lot of growing does. And again, one obviously doesn't want to be, like throwing themselves into something that they're not ready for.
Right.
But they also want to, they also want to make sure that they're not just, resting on their laurels and just doing the same thing day in and day out. Because I think that ends up kind of almost turning you into an automaton in some way. But there are some times where you do need to stay, restful. And there are times when life demands that you kind of stay to a strict routine for a little while.
Definitely.
Especially in, painful circumstances or but yeah, I digress as well. I think it's definitely important getting out of your comfort zone.
But it's difficult, and sometimes it's taking that first step to do. And you know what's funny, and something else that might be worth talking about is, I don't know about you, but when I am really like fucking going through it, I feel remarkably present in a way that I don't at any other time in my life. Like I remember like when like mom was diagnosed, I would go out, and I was going through a breakup at the time too. I would go outside and look at the sky and just be like, man, how lucky am I that I like get to feel pain, which is such a strange thought, right? But it's almost, there's something about going through those challenges in your life, not ones that you're giving yourself, like we were talking about, but these external challenges of things that you don't expect, these burdens that are thrust upon you, that really just force you to find happiness in like the smallest of places.
Yeah, that's really true too. I think, I'm definitely the same way in that I think in some cases I've never felt more alive than when I was going through something that was extremely difficult. And there is this sense of incredible gratitude when you're in those places as well. And I think it's because you realize that you've been sort of thrown out of you're shocked into a state of like realizing that, you've been taking things for granted. You've been taking for granted literally everything, the fact that you can walk on two legs, the fact that you can enjoy a 2-mile run if you wanted to, the fact that you can, have a glass of wine or in our mom's case, enjoy a grapefruit for breakfast. It does make you realize, and there's obviously a lot of, there can be a lot of sadness, there can be a lot of pain or whatnot that's surrounding that, but you do kind of realize like, as much as this is painful, whatever it may be that you're going through, but it is, I am so in a weird way glad that I am able to at least have this insight from this pain. Not glad that obviously it happened, but glad that you're able to have some kind of wisdom from the pain, that makes me appreciate the experience that I have or the experience that you have with that other person or whatever or had with that other person, if it's a breakup or something like that. That makes you feel just immensely grateful for what you do have. And the cool thing about that though is I do think we can tap into that a little bit with, because that's sort of like life forcing you into gratitude in weird ways. And that's honestly, I'm so thankful that I think, I'm assuming that a lot of people might have that experience. I don't know, I'm not a lot of people, I'm just myself, but the cool thing is I do think there are ways of sort of tapping into that similar, gratitude when you're not necessarily in any kind of, massive pain, which is worth doing too, I think, which isn't to, take away from the weird sort of silver lining of going through something immensely painful. But like it's the sort of remarkable thing is we can tap into it pretty much every day, and
Right.
I think I definitely don't do a good enough job of it. I as much as I really aspire to try and be mindful every day, or to sort of meditate every day, to do gratitude journaling, I think is a great thing. A lot of people kind of snort at it, but it really does make a difference. Just focusing on 3 things you're really grateful for, and really just kind of extending the half-life of that sort of feeling as much as you can, by just thinking about it and pouring attention into it, is really so valuable. I think for me personally, I think one of the things, just to speak about gratitude that I'm thankful for recently, there's many things, but one of them was moving from Manhattan in this sort of very uncomfortable apartment that was so hot and had no AC. It had we had a window AC unit, but it was not very good. And Manhattan is just it just traps heat, especially where we were. And it's smelly and dirty, and there are rats, and
Lovely.
It's really not a hospitable place. It's very dirty. There are really beautiful parts of Manhattan. I love New York. I'm a huge New Yorker, but I do not care. I don't care really for the East Village, but now I moved to a place that's much more quiet. That's a newer building. That has nicer amenities. That's clean. That's very it has AC, every day I'm just finding myself thinking about how grateful I am. And there it's been about a month now that I've lived in the place, and so I'm definitely finding myself starting to take it a little bit more for granted, with certain things, but trying now even with more intention to tap into the gratitude of just wow, living in a different home now that has a little bit more to offer is just such a luxury. And
Definitely.
I have everything I need. I don't obviously I think it's a really lucky position to be in. I'm really glad to be out here, but it's I really I really have everything I need. I don't need to I really it keeps you focused on what you have, as opposed to obviously the hedonic treadmill of wanting more and more and more material things, or more whatever, just more. But it really is sort of, I think that sort of process of gratitude really I don't know, really hones in on what you have and how great that is to have that, and how incalculably lucky we all are to be having the experiences we are.
Definitely.
And I should hope, that if I, if anything, hard were to happen to me again, that I would be able to tap into that. I think that's just the most, one of the most powerful feelings, I don't know, in the world, to sort of wield for oneself.
I get micro doses of that. So I'm actually, well, you've been in my apartment, but I'm sitting right by my air conditioner right now.
Yeah.
And I have to keep it off when I record, right? So because it makes so much noise and it ruins the audio quality. So it gets I was just blasting the air before we came on to record. And, I'm going to be hot for the next, 40 minutes or however much longer we're going to chat.
Mhm.
But after we're done, I'm going to get to turn it on. And it's like every time I have to record the podcast and I have to turn it off for an hour, when I turn it back on again, it's immense gratitude just that like the air's back on. So like these little micro hits of gratitude, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just even coming into a building that's AC, even if it's like a shopping mall, you're outside and it's like, I know in Philly, if it's anything, I mean, it's worse than New York, honestly, in terms of it being hot and sticky.
Yes.
But like, just, walking into like a place with AC, that split second of going from like such discomfort to like relief and like feeling as if everything has been sort of made right out of everything that was wrong before, seconds before, is like incredible. And I think what you're talking about, like those like little micro doses of it is exactly it. Like it doesn't need to be like walking around obnoxiously every day, talking about how grateful we should be for everything. Obviously, like that would just get like incredibly annoying. But I definitely think like being able to capitalize on those like little microdoses of, as you put it, of gratitude throughout the day is just like going to make that day like 5 to 10% better, maybe. I don't know.
Definitely. I don't know if you've heard of this thing recently on a podcast or, social media or whatever, but there's this new idea out there that the opposite of triggers are glimmers.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like this idea that like there are, you're going through your day and you might get triggered by something. But what if you're going through your day and like something like just really brings you like a lot of joy? What if you like took a moment to acknowledge that glimmer?
I love that. Yeah. I normally, I've been trying to stay off of social media more just because I do think that it does sort of drain on me. But if that has come from social media, I think that's really cool. I really like that. Glimmers. I think everybody gets those in their day to day. Like thinking even just about like, oh, I get to share like this. We have this plan. I have this plan with my significant other to make a specific meal tonight, and I'm really excited to do that. And just the thought of that, induces this like glimmer. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's practicing, right? It's practicing it so that you can recognize it even more easily when you see it the next time.
Yeah. No, most definitely.
It's one of many things. I'm also reading, Mom sent it to me because I was trying to read it physically, and I just I'm so busy and I'm driving so much that's a lot easier for me to do audiobooks. But there's been a few people on my mind as I've read it, and you're one of them. It's a book called The Highly Sensitive Person. By Elaine Akron. And it has been, when I talk about the center of this puzzle that's been missing, this is part of the thing that helped it fall into place. I was just reading it and I was like, this explains so much about me and about why I am the way that I am and why, I'm able to hone in on, I'll be able to walk into a room and pick up on somebody's vibe immediately. Or if I'm in a group of people and somebody's acting a little bit weird, I can usually figure out why just by observing them. And, there are people who are highly sensitive in other ways as well. I have a friend who, can't watch horror or scary movies or thrillers just because it is too intense on the nervous system. I was talking to her about it. She was with me in Ithaca and she was like, it's just it affects me. And the next day, the person that I was watching it with will have moved on and be thinking about other things. And I'll still be thinking about and empathizing with those characters in that movie.
Yeah. Oh God.
And so there's different types of highly sensitive people, but the book is really good in terms of, explaining how it's kind of a superpower and explaining why being intuitive and introspective actually can be a good thing, even though, she talks a lot about how the things that highly sensitive children experience and how they can be told that they're too sensitive or told that they just need to buck up and, toughen up. It's very much a reframing of this experience that, I've had growing up as a highly sensitive person, of just being like, oh wow, like maybe I like the way that I am, especially like with some experiences that I've had the last few years with some, as you know, less than sensitive people.
Yeah.
Just people who are just a little less aware of themselves and of other people. I really am starting to see the value in being a sensitive person and surrounding myself with sensitive people.
Yeah. That's an interesting. Yeah, that sounds like an interesting compliment to Susan Cain's Quiet, the book about sort of that empowering introverts in an extroverted world. And it sounds like it would be a good complementary read to that, because I think there's a lot of the themes in that book are similar, and it sounds like a spiritual cousin in a lot of ways.
That's the next book on my list, actually. So I'm listening to The Highly Sensitive Person, and I also have Quiet on audiobook. So that's going to be the next one that I listen to after.
Had you read that?
No, I haven't. I know that you have.
You have. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I haven't. I've heard lots of good things. And I think I've read like snippets of it, but I've never like gotten through the whole thing.
Yeah, it's very validating, I think, because sometimes I think it's easy to feel a little bit alone as introverts, when you are in a world of, extroverts. And I do think, I do very much think it's a spectrum. Like I'm certainly, like I definitely get energy from staying in or being alone and recharging, like reading or just like sort of sitting and thinking, like zoning out.
Yeah.
Which, I think, some people might find, disconcerting. Like, is he okay?
I remember when you were in high school, sometimes I think your teachers were like worried that you were high or something.
Yeah, no, all throughout, not even just high school. It was even in middle school. It was like, I didn't smoke until like midway through high school. But yes, my teachers in high school, there were multiple times where I walk in. There's one class, I think it was trigonometry. And the math teacher, she was this older woman she was very kind, very sweet, but she was like, there was no doubt in her mind. She just made her mind up that I was no good. And I don't know if it was because I was like, like taller and was an athlete. And so she just assumed like, yep, like no you good. Are that, that's scary. You are that is who you are. You're the sort of athlete who is up to no good. But yeah, there was one day where I walked in and so I've struggled with sleep pretty much all of my life.
Right.
And I feel like for a lot of my life, I was very tired. And I'd, gotten blood tests and stuff and it all came back fine. I don't know if I'm still kind of figuring that out. Like I definitely require more sleep than the average person.
I do too.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm just large or it's something about, I don't know what it is, but I definitely was always tired in high school and for that matter, middle school and every grade before that. Yeah. And just like, like the hours of K through 12 just did not suit my brain. Like I would, waking up at like 6 a.m. and then you have to get somewhere and you're in these like rooms with harsh lights and the desks are all uniform and then like you've all got like braces and acne and then you're like crushing on someone who's like a couple chairs over and like for me I was super romantic and I would like pine after certain like people and so the whole hour was spent like trying to decipher because that person like stared at the other side of the room where I was near, if that person was
looking at
into me or looking at me.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
At the same time, though, we're trying to learn, about World War II or like something like insanely heavy at, again, 7 a.m.
Right.
And anyway, so to get back to, yes, the teacher thought I was high and she even remarked on it, which I thought was kind of not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was like, oh, Connor's up to no good or something like that. And I was like,
Okay.
what are you talking about? And then my friend turned around and he smirked at me because he actually did do that. Like he would smoke and then come to class high, but like he knew that I wasn't, and so he was like just laughing, and like everybody else kind of like looked at me and smiled, and I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, nah, yeah. Or, I don't remember what she said, but we kind of moved on after it. But I was just really, really tired. I was always very tired. But
tired and introverted. Yep.
Yeah, I do have eyes that look kind of perpetually high. I definitely, I don't know if it's my eyelids or, I don't know what it is, but I definitely look perpetually tired and or high. And it really hasn't served me very well in my life. I hope that, like, obviously, like, I'm very privileged in a lot of ways. Like, I'm not trying to, like, the world's smallest violin definitely plays for me in this regard. But I like it. There have been multiple times where it's that where a teacher just assumes that I'm some like, terrible teenage, drug, some kid who's just coming to class and doesn't care, he's high, or even at a job. Like I remember, working jobs, and it's like, these are jobs where in the film industry where we're coming in at like 4 a.m. So again, really not in line with, me needing a lot of sleep. Yeah. And these people are like, making comments like, Connor, come on, what are you doing, man? Or something like that. And I'm just, it's not even me feigning ignorance. It's me saying, what are you talking about? And then they kind of insinuate or explicitly say, we think you're high. And I say, no, I'm genuinely not. I'm just very tired and I can't, I'm a slow processor. So I'm not thinking, as quickly as everyone else. And it takes me some time to like get oriented, and then I'm very, very quick. But, yeah, no, definitely someone who needs time to recharge. And yeah, and definitely, I think there are parallels from sensitivity and to introversion. Like there's definitely a lot of correlation there.
And she talks about that too. She says like, not all HSPs are introverted. Like some of them just seem more introverted because of their need to recharge because they're sensitive, not because they are introverted, if that makes any sense.
That makes all the sense in the world. Yeah. I mean, like, as someone who is very sensitive, I mean, I think we're all sensitive. Like, anyone has their sore spots. It's just sort of what precisely you're sensitive about. But I do think there are people who have like a slightly elevated version of that where, like, they're just very sensitive and in tune. I mean, maybe, empathic is an additional layer to that, where like they're just very in tune with other people's sort of energy, emotions. And so when you walk into a room, you can already pick up on whatever vibe is present there. And
speaking from experience, it's exhausting.
It is. Yeah, it is. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I enjoy people. I think George Carlin, the comic, the very sort of dark comic, may he rest in peace, had a quotation that went like, I really, really love people. I just can only stand them for like bursts of a minute and a half. Part of that, I think, is his sort of cynical look on people and human nature. But part of that, I think, is probably because he was an HSP, someone who was introverted who needed time to recoup from people. Or maybe that's just me reading into it incorrectly, out of context. But in any case, like the way in which I identified with that sort of quip was, I feel definitely like I love people. I love people. There's nothing that I enjoy more than like having conversations like this, or talking one-on-one with a friend, or even hanging out with a group of people. And like the energy that you get from being with people, and like everybody's sort of different personalities coming out. It's like, we don't even need TV shows. This is like the good stuff. It's amazing, but it can be exhausting just because like you are required to sort of feel out other people's emotions,
there's
I shouldn't say you're
expectations.
required to feel it out, because that is something that maybe I do that I don't need to do. But I think that the highly sensitive person oftentimes can't help but to sort of read a little bit more into another person's energy, or just feels things a lot more intensely than another person does. And as such, at the end of the day, they're just kind of a little bit more wiped out than, maybe a more extroverted, non-sensitive person, or even an introverted or ambiverted, less sensitive person, who can sort of like do whatever they do and then come home and be like pretty okay. I mean, tired, but not necessarily like, wow, I feel dog tired after, so we just hung out with, our couple friends, but
it's like, but like you have to be on.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of having to be on.
You're not acting. You have to be like sort of like if we all have different, like parts in like who like if we're all sort of, have different different like personalities. I don't know, different parts of ourselves,
different facets of our
different facets of our personality are really being played into. I think at any given moment of any day. And I think like when you're out, or at least certainly when I'm out, I do sort of assume a more sort of exaggerated persona of myself, which is, I have an agenda. Like I'm trying to be fun. I'm trying to be light. I'm trying to, communicate and talk in a way that sort of produces, chemistry and connection with my friends and people around me, and that does require work as much as it's fun. It's, also for I think a person who's more sensitive and more introverted, it definitely takes a little bit more leg work. But I think it's obviously, so enriching for experience, and obviously everybody needs humans, we can't live without each other, but no man is an island and all that. But that's so cool. I think that's such a perfect follow-up read for you'll have to send that to me.
They're
I have a lot of credits on Audible. Been neglecting mine.
I'll send you links to all of them. I'm also the Confidence Code I want to read. There's a few like books that I saw on Mom's bookshelf like a few years ago that I was like, I want to read that self-help book, and that one and that one and that one. And there are some that I might like even I'm dating an extrovert, and so luckily like he is very understanding of the fact that sometimes I just am like, I need to be alone. But it's always good for the people that we love to have a window into our minds. So I may hand him a copy of like The Highly Sensitive Person, even though I think that he himself is very sensitive in a good way. I do think it's interesting too, just like the complementing of extroversion versus highly sensitive versus introversion. Where does energy come from? And I mean, I think that my mom told us, like, when I was home last, she said, you're definitely all 5 members of our family. We have our parents and another younger brother. All 5 members of our family are more introverted entirely. Mom, though, was like, you're definitely the least introverted out of all of us. I was like, that's probably true. I call myself an extroverted introvert. But when it comes down to, at the very end of the day, what do I need to gain energy? It's to be alone and not have expectations of me, not have expectations to perform, quote unquote, or to be the funny guy, or to be the emotional support, or to even just listening can sometimes take effort, as much as nobody may want to admit it. Listening,
active listening.
Being a good, active listener takes effort. The only time that I am without expectations is when I'm alone. And that's when it's easiest for me to recharge, because there's no expectations there.
Yeah, I love that. And I so identify with that. And I agree. I would say that's true. Because like you are a tricky case, because you do love doing things. like if we go on a trip, like you always have like an itinerary. If if we're sort of doing nothing that day, you're kind of like, sometimes you want to be doing things, but at the same time, you very much, from what it seems like to me, you definitely love being like alone. Like you'll gravitate towards like, let's do something. And then you're like, okay, now we all need some space to like sort of do our own thing. And then we can come back. Yeah. Nap time. Yeah. A nice little nap.
Siesta.
Siesta. Yeah. Like being able to, and I think that period of time is so wonderful, not only for the person who needs it a little bit, but also I think for, everyone else in their life, it makes you appreciate coming back to the other people. Like you mentioned Esther Perel earlier, and she talks about how, distance can, enhance desire and love, and makes you miss a person, and that doesn't just track, I think, for romantic relationships. I think that also tracks for just, familial relationships, but also friendships and any kind of relationship where it's like you can't, necessarily be, by each other's side all the time. Certainly with friends, certainly with family, certainly with, partners.
No, I mean, that's codependency.
It's codependency. Yeah. So it's those moments of sort of alone time and are so valuable for both, for everybody. And I think, like, especially for me, that's where I come back to myself a little bit, and where I'm able to sort of like recalibrate and level with myself. And that's where a lot of like interesting insights about whatever I was doing before, or whatever, I had been, whatever is ahead of me in the week or in the months to come, or what's been behind me, being able to reflect and introspect about, a lot of things. It's so useful and to me, and it's so nourishing. I love it. And obviously, I think as an introvert, I can get too carried away into that, and I have, certainly done that, where I just indulge that, and it'll be sort of like, hey, Connor, maybe we should go see, a baseball game, or go to a baseball game or something like that. Yes, right. Yes. Experiences and hanging out. Yes. That's a good idea. It's been a week, 2 weeks, whatever. I
can't do 2 weeks. I could do a week of being alone.
Yeah, no.
I don't know if I could do much longer than that.
I pushed myself to limits before, and it was wild. You're like,
I did better than I thought that I would during the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I did a lot better. Like, then again, I had a partner that I was spending that time with, and so I would have been nuts without that.
Yeah, I think it would have definitely helped to be with a partner and like a pod or something. I also. I didn't have a partner, but I had a roommate who was sort of also, like we would, have lots of conversations. I got along really well with them. And so that helped, like, because it didn't feel like I was just entirely alone. And I really, like, I still feel, for the stories of the people who talk about, like, yeah, I was just entirely alone.
Yeah, I know.
There's some people who can kind of do that for a little bit, even though it's still hard for even the most introverted person. And there's a lot of people who just really struggle with that. And that's just so, I mean, it's through no fault of their own. It's just like, we need people, so.
Yeah. I think it's funny. I think I just put this together that I think that all 3 Dalton kids are introverts, but I think all of our partners are extroverts.
Yeah.
I think that's probably true.
That's probably true.
Now that I think about it. Interesting how that worked out. They balance us out nicely, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think otherwise it'd be easier to fall into patterns that are a little bit more like, not even bad. It's just, like you're maybe not pushing yourselves as much as you need to. Because I think the introvert pushes the extrovert and vice versa, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think, like, the extrovert pushes the introvert maybe to come outside of their, shell a little bit more. And I think, the other version of that for, in the reverse is like the introvert says, hey, sometimes maybe we need to wind down a little bit more. maybe we need to chill for just a couple of days, and then we can go back to going out. And so it's definitely like that sort of perpetual negotiation.
Balance. Yep.
When done right, obviously,
right.
Is really, really beneficial for
yeah, and perfect, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, kind of talk to me. I think we're gonna go for another 10 minutes or so here, but talk to me a little bit. Let's talk about like childhood and growing up, kind of as really intuitive and introspective people. Because I think that we were. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. Our parents are brilliant people. They're the two smartest people that I know in this world. I'm not just saying that. They're both very creative and just both very analytically and intellectually brilliant.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's like because they both have those strengths, like we also were born with this. I feel like there's this like constant. I've been working with about this in therapy too. This constant fight between being analytical and intellectualizing my emotions and being an emotional being. I feel like I'm constantly having like a push-pull between it's my natural tendency to intellectualize my emotions.
Same.
But I've been working more and I want to continue working more on just, how people say like, oh, well, I'm going to need to go think about that. I am going to start saying I need to go be in my body and like feel about that because thinking about it is something that comes so naturally. And I think it's funny because there are a lot of people who are the opposite, right? There are a lot of people who intellectualizing emotions maybe doesn't come as easily. And so they have the opposite problem where they're so in their emotions that there's like a lack of ability to intellectualize. And I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way as long as, we're all respectful and understanding that people are different. But, I digress. Where was I going with this? But basically, I mean, I think that for me, the journey has been to how do I come to more of a balanced place? It's my natural tendency to intellectualize and to think about how I feel and to be introspective. But I'm trying to work more on, I don't know, I wasn't an athlete. You were an athlete. I was never an athlete. So, and, also like being a woman with all of the baggage that comes along with that and having, negative experiences with my body and interactions with men. Like, I think that I'm realizing I've just been so disconnected from my own body that I'm trying to focus way more on staying away from the intellectualizing of emotions, which is difficult because I have a podcast and that's what I do here, right?
Yeah.
And then go more to feeling about it. So I guess I'm wondering, like, when growing up, do you think that there's like a certain level of that in all of us and all the members of our family because we are, I mean, this sounds so much like, oh my God, we're just like the best, but like we, like every other human in the world, are complex in our inner workings, in the way we work internally. I guess I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about that and about how being an introspective person has had its pitfalls, but also all of the big pluses that it's had as well.
Yeah, I think that's so well put, because that's something that I've really struggled with, I think, in my life too, is like sort of almost rationalizing and trying to be this like objective, sort of person who's taking a backseat in my own life when looking at a situation. It's like if you were to, because I am a pretty sensitive person, I think, and like talking with anybody, I think definitely in my past, like, and still in my present, like I've always struggled with just sort of feeling, and kind of expressing how I feel, as opposed to trying to constantly justify why the other person's, experience is just as valid, which it is, but I think I'll look at it in a very sort of like, almost too diplomatic way.
You filter it through the intellectualization. You filter your experience.
Yeah, because it's almost as if I'm looking at myself and whatever issue I have with, whoever or whatever, through like a history book, as if like I am the history book that's sort of, novelist who's writing about these two different characters and kind of manipulating them or talking about their stories and how both of them have the right to feel hurt and how both is valid. And it's like, that's true and good and nice. It's good to be, sympathetic to another person's why they might do that. And ultimately you want to come to that place with that other person, or I'm thinking if you like get into a fight with a friend, or if you are a family member, or just like something happens at work, your boss says something off color to you, or something, that you might have taken the wrong way. And my first impulse is always to sort of think like, well, like, did they mean that? Like, maybe they were, maybe they're going through something that's hard. Maybe, like I understand that and that's okay. And so I'll have conversations, like in my past, I'd have conversations with like my therapist where I'd sort of almost be justifying the other person's case before I was even talking about how I felt. And, my therapist astutely pointed out at the time, like, well, you're kind of doing that thing again where, you're talking about why it's okay for the other person to feel what they're feeling and why it's understandable and whatnot. And then you're kind of also talking a little bit about how you feel, but it's okay to just talk about how you feel. Like, I don't know this other person. I don't know that I ever will, but like, how do you feel about this?
You're my patient. Yeah.
Right. And so like, it's almost like I've got it slightly the steps misaligned, where I do think it is probably, and I think I really respect people who do this well. And I think, like years ago, I always kind of prided myself on the ability to be like, well, everybody is, I need to understand everybody and why, the motives for why they would do that. And then I understand it. And that's, that is good. Like that's a place where you don't really want to arrive with any kind of like conflict. But at the same time, like you is your own autonomous person with your own feelings, and you want to be able to feel whatever you're feeling and process that fully before you can come to sort of meet that other person, whether whoever it might be, halfway. And it's almost like you're both sort of trying to figure out how you feel, and then you bring those feelings to each other. You want to ideally both validate those feelings and maybe also clear up the air and understand each other. But in order to do that, there's no one better at representing yourself than yourself, and no one better than representing, that boss who made the comment that hurt you better than your boss who made, So I think one of the things that I've been aspiring to do is definitely like just kind of really sticking to like, as much as like you want to justify the other person's, perspective, let them do that for themselves, and you just focus on how you feel and just, feel that, like be very physical in that. Where do you feel? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your back? And then you come together with, and you sort of come to a place where you're both sharing your perspectives on how you felt in that moment. And maybe it's difficult to do with, I guess, a boss, but maybe a friend, and you've had someone's had a rift in a friendship or a fight, and you come together and you explain how you felt, and you can only do that through feeling it. You can only know. I'm definitely someone who takes a while to realize how I feel or process how I feel. I think there are some people who are maybe better at doing it quicker. I don't know, maybe not, but I think it takes a while for me to kind of understand that, and then sort of be able to articulate it in some kind of narrative that makes sense to me, and that will make sense to another person to come to a better understanding, and ideally some kind of resolution where the loop is closed and both people can move on with understanding.
And have a sense of what they can do to avoid a similar upset in the future.
Yeah, and like avoid, maybe difficult patterns and, breaking those patterns as well. Yeah. And I think like that's one of the beautiful things I do think about sports that a lot of people don't necessarily understand who, haven't delved into, really losing themselves in a sport, and just like rock climbing is a sport, like really losing yourself in feeling like present. You kind of have to feel present when scaling, a mountain or even a fake,
or you could die. Yeah.
Wall. And like feeling your hand and how it grips the I don't even know what they're called, the little grippy thingies that you put on a rock climber. I'm sorry for all the rock climbing enthusiasts out there, but and trying to get to that next spot to get you to a future place. Like you're really allowed to, like when you're gripping onto it, and maybe like your fingers are like really hurting, and you're able to like really be like, wow, that part of my body really hurts. And like, I think that's a really good lesson, like you're not focused on how the mountain or the rock climbing wall feels. You're focused on your fingers and how your thing hurts, or maybe your back is slightly twisted in a weird way that hurts. If you're able to do that, and like, in your real life, and say you just got laid off or something and you're feeling lousy about that, but in my case, it'd be like, well, there were cuts, and the company had to make cuts in some way, and it's like, well, no, you're allowed to just feel lousy, and there's a immediate or a very present pain, or immediate pain, and you're allowed to sort of feel that, and you don't need to justify, whatever else. You want to focus first on that immediate pain. So, similarly to that rock climbing sort of example, I think you want to focus on what you need to focus on first, and then only then are you able to move forward, in my opinion, from what I gather.
Definitely. Yeah, and Connor, like, we're going to have to wrap up here. I mean, as you know, I could talk to you, and I have talked to you for just hours on end.
Yeah.
But this is all the listeners are going to get to have a sneak peek into. But do you want to take a minute? If you have any last thoughts you want to share, now's the time. And if you want to, let people know where they can find you, where they can find, your writing, this is your time for so many last wrap-up thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I thank you so much for having me on here. It's a great honor and pleasure, and I loved every second of it. I think we had a really fun conversation. We touched a lot of things, and I hope to, have. Obviously, I look forward to having many more conversations like this in the future, with you in real life, and.
Yeah, I'll see you in 2 days. So
yeah, I will see you in a few days. I'm really excited for that. Appreciate you, love you, and had a really good time. People can find me at Connor Dalton, or Connor DLTN, CONNOR DLTN on Instagram, and then you can also find various work and creative projects that I'm doing on my website at connorjacksondalton.com. And then just anywhere in the tri-state area, that's where I hang out.
Connor, thank you. I am pleased that the listeners get to know you the same way that I do. And I'm very much looking forward to hanging out with you. And hey, listeners, my entire family and all of our significant others are getting together in the Catskills when this episode is going to be out. So even more fitting, it's our parents' wedding anniversary. It's the 2-year anniversary of the podcast, and I got to have you on. So it just feels really appropriate. But I love you very much, and thank you for sharing your wisdom and your life experiences and your storytelling. And I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love you so much too, and excited to keep living.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for listening and being here today. Check Connor out on all of the socials, interwebs, website things. I'm a little biased, but he is a very talented writer and just a really good person as well. So other than that, though, you've been listening to Wine, Dine, and 69. I'm your host, Rachel Dalton, and let's keep talking.